Hey, what's up? Hope you're doing well. I want to talk about the new MindsEye update that just rolled out. One of the clearest things they did was add more guidance for players during missions. Not the overly hand-holding kind, but extra objective markers and blips where missions have been historically confusing or unfair. For example, they changed a handful of mission encounter points so that objectives show up more reliably. They adjusted fail volumes that could prematurely boot you out of a mission. And they made certain mission-specific sequences less punishing when the player doesn't do things in the exact sequence the designers originally expected. From a practical perspective, that means fewer did I miss a step moments and more time actually playing instead of reloading checkpoints. If you're wondering about UI tweaks, there are a couple of small but important changes. On PC, the companion drone controls have been remapped, so descending the drone uses left control instead of left shift, which is a nicer bind for a lot of setups. And the guidance blip visibility range was massively increased. The blips now show up much farther away than before, which help you get your bearings when the world is large and you're trying to find the next objective. Those are the kind of adjustments that don't make headlines, but immediately reduce friction during play. And they're exactly the kinds of fixes veteran players tend to appreciate. Audio and cinematics got attention too. Several cutscenes that were missing music or had audio glitches were fixed. Ambient sound got some polish, and certain minigame audio cues that previously left players confused have been clarified so the game gives better feedback during those moments. The visuals and animation teams also pushed through a number of improvements. Motion blur default settings were dialed back because many players complained it made fast movement feel smeary, and there are targeted fixes to weapon holding and locomotion transitions so your character animations don't look like they're fighting the system when you move or aim. For people who bought the Deluxe Edition, the patch includes the new Silva E-Series Street Race event, a proper city center street circuit in Ridge Rock with grandstands, barriers, and NPC spectators. It's presented as a skill-first challenge and adds something competitive for players who like to chase leaderboards in the driving and racing sections of the game. On the performance and stability side, this update sits on top of earlier emergency hotfixes the team released to tackle crashing and memory issues. The studio previously deployed hotfixes to address a major memory leak that was causing a lot of crashes for players at launch. And the broader context here is that MindsEye has been through a tough post-launch period where performance has been the top priority for multiple patches. While this update doesn't claim to be a one-and-done miracle cure, it continues that push. There are optimizations in a handful of environments, fixes for some expensive visual elements, and removal or simplification of certain ambient assets that were disproportionately expensive for little visual payoff. There are lots of specific mission fixes listed in the patch. Things like clearing a sandstorm earlier in one mission to improve visibility, adding scannable markers where players could get stuck looking for an objective, adjusting NPC health in several fights so you're less likely to fail through artificial difficulty, and fixing a range of environmental and collision bugs that caused missions to behave oddly. On the AI front, there are fixes where enemies would spawn idle or fail to engage properly, and other tweaks to make enemy reactions more reliable, so level pacing feels more intentional instead of buggy. If you care about download sizes and platform builds, because yes, that affects whether you will actually pull the update right away, the reported download sizes vary by platform. Roughly 7.4 gigabytes on PC storefronts, about 2.5 gigabytes on PlayStation 5, and around 5.5 gigabytes on Xbox Series XS. Those sizes aren't tiny, but they're not massive full reinstall jobs either. They're large enough to include a meaningful set of fixes and a few new assets for the deluxe content. I don't want to pretend everything's fixed. The team has been transparent that this is an ongoing process, and the patch notes reflect a mix of quality of life fixes, mission-specific bug squashes, audio and visual repairs, and a few new pieces of content for certain editions. For players who've been frustrated by crashes, missing audio and cutscenes, or missions that felt unfair, this update addresses a number of those pain points. For players who are hoping for sweeping mechanical overhauls to combat or core systems, this isn't that. It's a concerted attempt to stabilize and polish rather than to reinvent. At the end of the day, the tone here is repair and steady improvement. The studio is clearly trying to rebuild trust by fixing concrete problems and making it easier to actually complete missions without feeling punished by bugs or awkward design choices. Whether it's enough to change broad perceptions will depend on subsequent updates and whether the fixes stick across a wider variety of systems and playstyles. But for now, the patch lands as a meaningful step toward a more stable experience, and for many players, that's exactly what was needed.